sometimes you just need a break. And in my case, I took 2 weeks off where I was entirely out of town, away from the garden, followed by a second 1 week project that took me 3 weeks away from the garden. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that I'm surrounded by weeds in their entirety. Cosmo can't eat them all. So we have a lot of weeding to do, but there's also a lot of problems that showed up, things that got overgrown, things that need to get harvested, and a lot of empty gaps in the garden. So first I want to show you some of the problems that I have and what I'm going to do about them. But today it's all about maintenance and actually getting back into the garden and kickstarting it for that next season. So today we're going to start off here in the south garden, where you could probably see a couple of different problems. First of all, this broccolini is fully in flower. I might try cutting back one of them to see if it will regrow properly. But what I'm looking at right now is that it's all buzzing with bees. So it's one of the few things that the bees have to sort of forage from. So I'm a little bit tempted to leave it just for the bees, but behind that is actually this row of determinate tomatoes. I kind of put these in here on a whim to see if I could get away with them. And now they're basically just starting to come into their element. But I'm also a little bit worried that they're also now so old that they're going to start producing and harboring a lot of disease. So I think I'm going to just make the call and remove these and start afresh from a new batch of tomatoes. But the other thing I wanted to mention really quickly is that during this video, I'm going to be testing out this tool belt. Now, this is a little kind of a behind the scenes look at how we do things here at Epic Gardening. This is a product that, you know, we are interested in trying to figure out a good tool belt option, but we don't want to just grab one and sell it. So I am actually testing this out. I'm going to be trying a variety of different things. Right now I have some pruners in this pocket, some snips in the middle pocket, and a pair of gloves in the bigger pocket. Now there's also a big pouch back here where I have a bunch of seeds that I need to start, as well as some labels and a actual marker. So I'm going to be basically cycling things in and out of this, but since we're doing a lot of different things today, I figured it was a great day to test this guy out. So if you have any questions about that or suggestions, I'll probably mention a few things as I go. But first, let's go ahead and remove these tomatoes because, like I said, I don't want any disease present because I already found root knot nematode in the main tomato patch, and I need a nice clean area for my tomatoes this year. In terms of pruning back this broccolini, like I mentioned, I'm going to select this one because it's the most annoying in terms of it's growing into the pathway. So it's actually the only one that's slightly inconvenient. So we're gonna go ahead and do this one as our tester, and we'll see if even after it has triggered its flowering cycle, it will produce again. I'm leaning towards it probably won't, but I have been surprised before. So I think I removed anything that was flowering, and now it should be able to reset itself. And I'm gonna leave this broccoli raw here because the bees are absolutely loving it, and there's this guy right here buzzing next to me. So now let's move on to removing these tomatoes. So I have harvested a couple tomatoes off this. It's growing very oddly considering it's a determinate and it's producing things at random intervals. Like for example, here's this tiny tomato that's already ripening, and right underneath it on the floor is another one, and you could see how big the size difference is. So something's weird's going on. It's just not growing in its optimal conditions. Of course, that's due to the fact that it's winter. I am going to remove this. Like I said, you could see up close, this has a bunch of like little speckles on it. It has weird discoloration. Very typical for tomatoes grown out of season. And we're gonna go ahead and just basically rip these right out of the ground. One last thing, since I mentioned that I found root knot nematode in the other garden, I'm actually going to opt to do something I usually don't do, which is pull the roots out of this plant. Because the only way to know for sure if you have the root knot nematode is to look at the root structure and see if you could find any galls. I'll post a clip of the tomatoes that I found in that garden that did have the root knot nematode, and you could see, well, maybe we'll find it here, hopefully not. But then we could do a nice comparison. All right, so if you take a look at these roots, you could see that they are branching nicely, but they're also not swollen. When you have the root knot nematode, each individual root will get bit by that nematode and will create this gall, which is like a large swollen root. And all of these roots, I pulled out all three, look normal and healthy to me, so that's a great sign. That means I don't have root knot nematode here. Fortunately, it's not all bad news. Since I left, my peas are looking absolutely incredible. They're taller than me now. These are all shelling peas, which are my personal favorite type of pea. They're just so tasty to snack on. I almost never have enough to actually cook with. So this is a good reminder that I need to start some more peas. And they are covered in flowers, and some of these peas are starting to swell up nicely. So maybe in a week or so, I'll actually have my first peas. but you'll see that a lot of it has come off the trellis netting and it's really leaning heavily towards me. Now it'll probably be fine, but I don't want to risk it actually falling over when it's fully loaded in peas. So I actually threw a little string into my tool belt, and I'm going to wrap it on this post here and do a sort of weak little string support. The idea behind this is that the string will give the peas something to lean on. I don't want to cinch it down too tight because then I'll restrict airflow, but I do want to actually bring it in tight enough that they are going to be pulled in a little bit. Okay, that string is nice and taut. It's doing a little bit of work to keep these up, and that should be enough. I might pull another one a little bit later when they actually start bearing peas. But let's move on to the next task. So I'm now over in the north garden and we're looking at some of my brassicas, in particular, cauliflower. Now, while I was gone, a lot of my cauliflower did head, and I missed a lot of those ideal harvest windows. So you could see, for example, here, that it's not a nice uniform round kind of compact head, but it's starting to branch out and actually starting to flower. The other thing you'll notice is that this should be an entirely white cauliflower, but what you see is that on the outskirts, it's all sort of this purplish color. Now that has to do with the fact that I didn't actually wrap these fan leaves around the cauliflower while it was heading up. So usually you'll see recommendations where you take some of these outer leaves, you tie them up to protect the inner head, and that's exactly why you need to do it, because if you don't, it will get discoloration, which is totally safe to eat, but it's just a little bit unsightly for some people who are expecting a white cauliflower. So I'm actually gonna eat this tonight. I've already harvested this guy right here, and we're gonna have a roast cauliflower for dinner. It might be a little bit tougher since it started to flower, but I found that if you make something like soup or you roast it nice in the oven at 425, it will be totally tender by the time it's done cooking. So I'm not too worried about it, but it is a bummer that I missed a lot of these ideal harvest windows. When it comes to weeding, there are a lot of different options. Now, the most common that I personally like doing is just putting on a pair of gloves, walking around and yanking everything out of the ground. This ensures that you pull out the taproot and it fully kills the plant. So if I have something like, for example, this mallow over here, that's quite large, it's much better for me to come through and just yank it out of the ground. So anything roughly that size, my preference is always going to be to pull it and set that aside for the compost. But if you have a lot of small weeds where they haven't really had a chance to really thicken up yet, my favorite option is using a hula hoe. Now, the reason why I mentioned the small weeds is because the smaller the weed is, the less likely it's going to be to come up once you've actually chopped it out the base. So by just coming through here and running the scuffle hoe or hula hoe or oscillating hoe, whatever you want to call it, across all these weeds, I'm going to pretty effectively actually kill them. The nice thing too is that I can just leave them in place and they'll just break down over time, turn into essentially mulch and return some of those nutrients that they're pulling out of the soil. So whenever you have small weeds and you have a lot of them, I always like reaching for the hula hoe. But whenever you have those bigger weeds, or you run the hula hoe through and you can't actually get the whole entire plant to get chopped, then you want to come through and yank it out of the ground. That's the only way to know that you're for sure actually removing it from coming back and regrowing in your garden. So over here is a particularly thick patch of weeds. It's mostly that mallow. I'll quickly note before somebody says it in the comments that this is technically edible, but I have plenty of other edible things to eat that I'm not really scraping for any extra greens. I personally haven't found this to be that good. We have ate it a few times, but it's definitely not my favorite. Now, this is the nice thing about throwing on your gloves is that you get a lot more grip. And really the beauty is that after it's rained is a perfect time to weed because the soil is nice and soft and you're able to just go ahead and pull that whole plant out, no problem. So I'm gonna shake that soil off so I get most of that back, but let me show you how quickly it is to pull all these. And so just like that, I got all this giant pile of biomass. This is definitely going in the compost after I chop it up a bit because it is absolutely chock full of nutrients that I want to return to my garden. So here's that pile of weeds that I just collected. But before I add it to the compost, it's really a lot better if you break it up first. So what I'm using is a flathead shovel that's nice and sharp. This lets me just chop up the weeds, breaks it into little pieces, and helps it compost a lot faster. Well, now we have a bunch of weeds to add to the compost, which means that I need to find a source of browns. I've added all that wet potting mix and now all this green material. So I'm definitely gonna need to source some more straw because the other thing that happened while I was gone was all my straw got flooded by rainwater. So that was a nice kind of cathartic day because I was able to finally get some of these tasks done that have been bothering me ever since I've been back, like all these weeds that have been sort of creeping all around my garden. I'm really happy I've tackled that. I've also freed up the seedling table, which feels amazing because I'm just looking at it right now and just picturing and envisioning all those spring plants that I'm just so excited to plant and actually get started. So I'll probably sow a flat of seeds right after this, but my thoughts on this belt so far is, first of all, I have all my tools still, which is amazing. I usually end up losing these throughout the day, leaving them in random places. I really like the ability to carry my gloves around because otherwise I just won't ever go get them and put them on. So that was really nice. That big pocket is really handy for that. And then this giant pocket in the back, well, I never got to it until maybe I will right now. I was able to carry all the seeds around with me. So if I was doing some weeding, sowing a little seeds directly, that would have been really handy. The other thing I like is that I could kind of swing it out behind me if it's in my way. But I think overall, I want to reduce the size a little bit. I have no idea what to do with this, that, or that, and maybe just make it a little bit slimmer by, I don't know, about 80% of this size. So that's a little peek behind the scenes of what's going on here, what a day-to-day looks like. It's a bunch of little things, especially when you're trying to catch up in the garden. It's important to take little bites at a time. Don't get overwhelmed by how bad everything seems to you. Focus on one problem, solve it, move on to the next one. By the time you're done solving all these little problems, you'll feel so much better. I know I do. Getting those weeds out of there feels amazing. The seedling table is now all potential, and I'm just ready to go. So that was it for today. A little slice of life behind the scenes. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.